Well, hello, traders and investors. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your weekly NeoTA broadcast. We take a look at these markets, doing it from a neoclassical perspective. That's me. We're looking at supply and demand on the charts. We look at a daily basis. That's the daily shows. A weekly basis, which is tonight's show. And we're trying to figure out what's going to happen, right, based on supply and demand. That's what moves markets. It's a testing process. That's what you're interested in. If you can figure out what's important, what's significant, and then measure the test, you can figure out where the market's going to try and go next. So that's what we do here at TA Today. If you're interested and you haven't subscribed, reach up in the right-hand corner and do so. I do this show once a week every Sunday evening. It's archived on YouTube. It's available to you under the channel L.A. Little. As far as what happened last week and what we think is going to happen in the coming weeks, let's take a look. Let's review what took place. You know, you had the Fed coming up. The expectation was that they may raise the rates. Well, that kind of got squashed on Friday because the employment numbers came out. Those numbers showed employment expectations of 150K weren't even close. It got to 38K, I believe, was the number. That took the bonds, sent them soaring 1.5% to the top side. Took all the commodities with it. Gold spikes 2.5%, almost 3%. You had the same thing take place across the board elsewhere, like emerging markets and so forth, got a nice big push. And then, of course, with the dollar plummeting, that put pressure on the euro. Euro goes the other way, down 1% on the DAX, down on the Nikkei. Well, actually, the Nikkei tonight will probably be down. It was up on Friday. Of course, they were closed by the time our numbers come out. I expect to see some pressure on them tonight. If you look at our markets, they did trade down, but they actually held up pretty well. You were flat on the NASDAQ, which is an indication of the continued desire to buy this market no matter what. It's going to be curious to see whether or not these markets can hold in the face of what looks to be an inability to raise rates and potentially a slowing again in the U.S. economy, or at least that's the way this one number is being read. Now, the problem is going to be is that this week you've got a lull between now and when the Fed does whatever the Fed's going to do. Then you've got the Fed speakers that follow, including Yellen, on the following week and the week after. Fed meetings next Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we'll get a statement out of them as a result of whatever they decide to do. Right now, the market continues to think that the Fed's got our back, right? No matter what happens, the Fed's going to come in there. It's going to save us. It's going to keep us from falling. If we look at the actual indexes, you can see the tails starting to form here. This market doesn't want to give it up. And at this point, this market keeps telling us that the buyers believe that the Fed has their back. So you get a push up, you get a consolidation last week, no real movement in the markets, at least here on the S&P. You start the week here, you finish the week slightly higher. Actually, it was just barely higher. It was started on this day, right? So you're just slightly higher on the week. You're still dealing with all these swing point highs. We got over a swing point high here, got over another one there. There was another one back over here that you can't see that triggered on the next day, but then we fell back down. Now that fall back down was kind of important because if you remember on the weekly basis, you've got the breakdown bar that took place in August of a year ago. That's this area up here. Remember, this was the big consolidation. I even wrote an article about break dance lower. That came out right before this breakdown took place, right? And that's the area that we keep dealing with up here. That bar is significant. It's a wide price spread, high volume bar. Those bars carry significance. That one continues to carry significance. That's the sort of stuff you have to figure out neoclassically, and then you key on it. And you key on the test into that bar and what it's doing. If you look at what came back, the push back up, that straightaway push, never could get over that bar. Most of the time, you get these kind of breakdown bars, you try to go back to the top of them and test them. Here we are again, big push up, testing it again. And when we look at the big volume on the bottom down here, we actually tested that as well and couldn't break it down, right? So what does this chart tell you? It tells you there's this big range that's in effect, right? And this range, and actually if we draw it correctly, it's this area. Let me clean it up and draw it again. There's this big range that's in effect. It's this area, right? And this area has been where everything is traded now for 9 months. Before that, you had a consolidation, tight consolidation up here that went on for almost 9 months. Now you have the larger consolidation area, and we're up here testing that top of that area one more time. Is it going to give up? Is it not? That's really the question, right? And what you have to do is measure how it comes into it and what it does at that price point, and how it reacts to anything that keeps it from getting over it or actually allows it to get over it. The retest, the regen, all those kinds of things that we do neoclassically. At this point, I've told members what I think is going to happen. I really can't spill the beans here with respect to exactly what I believe is going to play out this coming week. Although what I can tell you is that this market looks like it's going to hang probably longer, because you've got a lull. And all the things that started happening on Friday now are going to continue. If we look at the NASDAQ got the push up at the beginning of the week, ends up higher on the week. It was a pretty good week for the NASDAQ. And so as we look at this trade, right, the NASDAQ gets over a swing point high. Neoclassically, what that means is that you are going to have to retest and regen most likely that high. Well, that started immediately. You tested it on Friday. The volume on Friday on the test was 16.9. You come into 17.8. You don't have enough to break it down. What does that mean? You're going to try to push it back up. So can this regenerate to the top side? That's the real question. I think this is a key market for the coming week. If we look at the NDX has a kind of the same picture in that it was trying to get into the swing point high. It's not at the highs, it's trying to get into it. That high's low, in this case, is what's important, 45.16 roughly. We trade at 45.09, 45.10 at the close. So in other words, we get into it Thursday, we can't stay into it, start pulling back. NASDAQ stronger, NDX weaker, big cap technology, biotech, the SOX, that's what makes this up. SOX is beyond extreme at this point. If you pull up a chart of the SOX and look at it, you can see the SOX has made a huge move, probably wants to consolidate. Going back to the NDX chart, if we take this to the weekly chart, you've got the same sort of bars on the weekly chart doing the same sort of thing. You got a breakdown bar here with the top at 45.22. You got a breakdown bar back there, 45.68. Where do we come to? We get as high as 45.74. We're back up there trying again, 45.31. It's pretty obvious this is an important area. And so when you see these kinds of things on a chart, you key on these things and you focus on how the trades take place at those key areas. And that's what's happening right now on the longer term basis. The coming week, it's going to be hard to push up. It's going to be hard to push it much down. I suspect it's going to try to consolidate to some extent. The action is going to be off of what the Fed did on Friday. So if you want to make trades, you want to be long emerging markets, for example. You want to be long commodities, right? These are the breakout areas. You can see the pushes taking place in these areas. Whether you're talking about gold, whether you're talking about the commodity stocks like grains, for example, right? All of these big pushes on Friday as a result of what happened in the employment numbers. Those are the areas that you want to focus on if you want to be long and you want to trade it. And I suspect you'll have a good trade for about a week here until the Fed does whatever the Fed's going to do. That's it for tonight. Thanks for joining me. If you want to be a member and you want more details, you want to be able to get at all the great tools that we have here. I was showing members today some of these tools, things that we can do on them. There's trading signals that are generated. You can monitor your stocks. It will give you breakouts, retraces. It will tell you, alert you automatically all the time. You don't have to set the alarms at your broker. It will give you those alerts All of that's available to you here at TA Today, and of course my communications with you, both in terms of the chat rooms that I have, but things that you can't see here, which if I log in that you'll be able to see. Let me just pop in right quick. I have broadcasts that take place daily, morning comments. The archives are available to you, and not only my chat room, right, but if I pop into this room and scroll down here, I've got the cradle to grave videos that are live, as well as updates that come over Twitter, history of all my logs, and then the actual portfolios that I carry. So if you want to check it out, please do. All you have to do is come over here, hit the Get Started button. That will pop you into the programs that we have and the bundle that is available for you. It's about as cheap as you can get, folks, for great advice. Matter of fact, probably cheaper than it should be. But the ideal here is to benefit you so much more than trying to stuff my pockets. I want people to learn neoclassical. It's a better way to trade, and I teach you how to do that. Have a great one. Take care. Good night.